Hello and welcome to our show Dreams, Passion and Your Hong Kong Story. Today we have with us an amazingly talented, multifaceted, versatile genius, Bhakti Mathur. Bhakti, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Jaya. You know, everyone's going to think I bribed you to say those wonderful things.
So Bhakti is an award-winning author of 2 best-selling books. She has written over 16 books in 2 of her series. They go by the name of Amma Tell Me and Amma Take Me. She will talk more in detail about the books, but to give an introduction of Bhakti, Bhakti started as a finance professional. She worked as a private banker for nearly 20 years with high net worth clients. But finance was not a field Bhakti would stop or consider retiring it. She has way too much creative juice and too much energy to kind of stop there. She pivoted and decided to become an author. Not only that she writes her own books, but Bhakti has been writing for South China Morning Post. She's a writing ambassador for many NGOs. She's a mentor for many of them. She has spoken in Hong Kong and India literary festivals. Bhakti is an avid adventure enthusiast. She's an avid runner. She's run many marathons. And recently, she was awarded as one of the most inspiring Women of the Year award in 2019. Oh my God, Bhakti, your list is endless. So before I begin our interview, my first question to you is, how do you manage to do it all and still look so radiant and beautiful?
Well, thank you, Jaya. You're very kind. But I think it sounds more glamorous than it actually is. I just focus on doing what I really like and doing one thing at a time. And I think that's what's really helped following my passion.
Really?
Yeah.
So, but tell me about your childhood. Like, were you always so multifaceted as a child? Like, were you always interested in trying out different things? Or is it that as you started progressing in your life journey, you decided to reinvent yourself?
So I think as a child, I was pretty much like the normal Indian kid sitting in the first row, trying to study, trying to do well in school. And I think when we were growing up, and probably, you might have a similar background, there wasn't much focus on anything other than academics, at least for me. So it was do well in school, get into a good college, get into a good job. And so I never really thought about, later on also reinventing myself. I really thought about pursuing what I wanted to. So I got into writing because of my kids, because I wanted to tell them about all the festivals that I grew up celebrating and the stories that I grew up hearing. So it was sort of quite organic. It wasn't really planned.
I see.
Yeah.
So tell us about the books that you have written. Tell us about Amma Tell Me and Amma Take Me.
So my children call me Amma,
Okay.
and that's how the name Amma comes. And it was 2010, and Holi was around the corner. My kids were about 2 and 3 and 1 at that point of time. And I was looking for a book to tell them about Holi, and I couldn't find anything. And I remember I was sitting with my husband, and I said, I want to write a book on Holi. And, he said, just do it. It sounded like a Nike ad at that moment, but I just started. So they were really the motivation for me to get started. And of course, as you know, then a whole lot of work goes into it. I had to figure out whether it's going to be a picture book, I want illustrations, then I decided to write it in rhyme, inspired by Dr. Seuss, because Dr. Seuss was one of my favorite authors while growing up. And that series now has 12 books. And the second series, Amma Take Me, was actually Penguin's idea. It's published by Penguin. And it's really about places in India, places of worship, historical importance. And it's like a travelogue of a mother and her 2 kids. As she travels with her children, she talks about the places and the history behind it and the mythology.
Okay. So you had a stellar career in finance. So what motivated you to become an author?
So really, again, the children. And at that point of time, I never thought that I would quit banking because I liked what I did. And I remember at one point of time, my husband telling me that at some point, I think, maybe one of us should spend more time with the children. And I remember telling him, that's not going to be me because I really like what I'm doing. But then once I started writing, and I found the writing work had grown quite a bit and I was loving that. But it was hard because I would work the whole day, then come back home, spend time with the kids. And when they were young, they would go to bed early, which was a good thing.
Okay.
And then I would have time to write. But then it became a bit tiring. And I think eventually what happened over a period of time is I didn't find banking fun anymore, in the sense that I really started asking myself, what is it that I'm doing, or what is it that I can do that will give me value at the end of the day. And it could be as simple as, maybe going for a hike or a yoga class, and banking was not the answer anymore. And I gave myself a year. I said a year is a long enough time, and if I continue to feel the same way at the end of 12 months, that means I must listen to this voice.
Wow.
And that's what happened.
So for 1 year, you continued working and you continued writing.
So I continued working and writing for almost 7 years.
I see.
But I gave myself a year since the time that I kind of started getting this feeling that I should get full-time into writing. I said, maybe it's just a whim, but let me give it a year, and if the feeling still persists, that means it's a strong enough feeling and shouldn't be ignored.
So what gave you the idea for getting into this, this field of children's book for the Indian mythological characters?
So I never did any research, And, I never did any research to find out where there's a gap in the market, what's not written about, what will sell. It really came from what I wanted to tell my kids. And at that point of time, I didn't even know what else existed in the market. And for me, I thought, okay, I'm going to bring this book out. And even if nobody buys it, I'll have the satisfaction that I wrote something for my children.
How wonderful.
And I decided to self-publish because I did a bit of research between self-publishing and going the traditional route. And I really loved the process. So for me, the answer always was that as long as I enjoy the process, I will do it, because the process sort of is the reward, or was the reward, or still is the reward for me, in a sense.
And so this is how you began the Amma Tell Me
That's how
series.
I began the Amma series, and I was very lucky. It was very well received. And then also, I had a very strong, when I think back upon it, I had a very strong storytelling background. So my mother used to work when I was in school, and I had a caretaker, sort of a nanny, but he was a male nanny, and his name was Bhagwan, which, as you know, means God. And he couldn't read, he couldn't write, but he was the best storyteller in the world.
Wow.
So he would pick me up from my school bus stop every day, get me home, and there was no iPad, as you know, no iPhones. We didn't even have a television in the house for many years. So imagine this, a child who's 7 years old having a 3-hour storytelling session every day after school.
Wow.
And there were stories from the Indian epics, from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, about kings and queens and the most evil of adversaries. And I think that stayed with me somewhere and planted a seed in me.
Wow.
And I think that's where my interest in mythology comes from. And those were the stories that I wanted to share with my kids. And also, the other thing I feel is that, families are nuclear now. My children don't have any grandparents from either side. So I miss that, because a lot of these stories were also told to me by my grandmother.
I see.
And I thought that these books would be a good way to keep that alive. A parent reading to a child, also creating that special moment.
So that's a very entrepreneurial spirit, if you look at it. The seed planted in you by your male caretaker, which actually stayed within you, which inspired you going forward when you decided to write, that you should actually take this journey forward, because there's a lot more left to create out there.
Thank you. I never looked at it like that, but thank you.
So what were, what were some of the challenges that you faced in this journey? And here, when I would like you to highlight some of the challenges that a budding author faces when he or she decides to launch their book. What are those kind of challenges that you faced when you decided to go in for this publishing world?
So that's a great question, Jaya, because there were a lot of challenges. So I had to first decide whether I want to go to a traditional publisher and send my manuscripts in. And then I thought, my God, I don't want to collect these rejection letters and sort of frame my office wall with them because of all the stories that you hear of people having been rejected so many times. For me, it was wanting to get the story out in my way. I also didn't want a publisher coming and telling me, no, this cover doesn't look nice, we'll choose our own illustrator. So it was a labor of love. It was something I was doing for my kids, so I really wanted to do it every way. My way, have control over everything, and maybe that speaks about my personality as well. Really wanted to, not delegate, but decide everything myself. And so I thought self-publishing is the best way to do it. So I registered a publishing company in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a great place to do business. Within an hour, my company was registered.
Wow.
So it was really nice. And then the challenge was that once I decided I had to find an illustrator, I wrote it. That was the easier part. Once I had the book printed, I had to think, how am I going to get this into the bookstores? Because still people don't know about your product. No matter how good it is, you won't be able to get it to the reader. And that's where I struggled. I had to go from bookstore to bookstore. So Hong Kong, I was very lucky. Bookazine has been very supportive. They saw the draft, and even before seeing the final copy, they said, we love it, we're going to carry it. The challenge was the Indian market, which is my biggest market. So in India, bookstores loved it. But the problem was sitting from here dealing with 10 different bookstores, invoicing them, managing the accounts was very, very hard when I had a full-time job. So the challenge really was getting distributors in different markets to distribute the books. And that takes time because nobody is willing to take a self-published author who has one book.
Yes.
Because all these distributors deal with publishers who have hundreds and hundreds of titles coming out every year. So it took me a while till I had about maybe 6, 7 titles.
I see.
And a distributor took me on in India, in Singapore, in the US, and Hong Kong, of course, as I mentioned, there's Bookazine. So distribution was the big problem.
Big problem.
Which took a while to, for it to fall in place. And I think that's the challenge for self-published authors.
You have been living in Hong Kong for so many years, I think nearly 20 years
Yes.
now, and you decided to write books, and that even based on Indian mythologies, and then you decided to scale it in the Indian market. So how was Hong Kong a location for your business?
Oh, Hong Kong has been great, both on the banking side as well on the books. So in a way, I think I've grown up in Hong Kong. I'm not going to disclose my age to you, Jaya, but I really feel that I've grown up in this city. And I'm very grateful to it in many ways. You know, my banking career, almost all of it was here. My children were born here. You know, a lot of my very dear and close friends are here. My support system is here. So I feel Hong Kong has given me as much, if not more, than India. You know, so I consider Hong Kong my home now. So that has been great. In terms of the books, that's an interesting question you ask. A lot of people used to ask me this, that because I would go into schools in Hong Kong, into international schools and even the local schools to read about the stories. And people would say, but this is Indian mythology. Do you think kids will be interested?
Yeah.
And I realized a good story is a good story. It
No matter
doesn't
where.
matter which culture it's from.
Totally.
And the stories have been so well, accepted in Hong Kong that
Wow.
it's really been great. In fact, all my book launches here have been at Bookazine.
Where all have you launched your book? Which schools, for instance, have you been to? And
Also,
can you
I've
tell
been
us
to most of the international schools, HKIS because my children were there, starting with HKIS, and then French International, GSIS, Peak School, Kennedy School. They were one of the first to call me. Harbour International, many of them, and some of the government schools as well. And I was really looking forward to being a part of the Young Readers Festival, which unfortunately because of coronavirus has been postponed. So yes, I've been to these schools. I've been a part of the Hong Kong Literary Festival 3 years back, where I was very honored to be invited to speak about self-publishing and my journey in the self-publishing field.
So not only that, you are doing amazingly well as an author, but I also look at you as a brand ambassador for India, because I'm sure when you go and read about all these mythological stories to the kids, you must be loaded with a lot of questions about Indian culture.
Oh, I am. I absolutely am. And I remember reading Ramayana in one of the schools here. And, for viewers who are not familiar with the Ramayana, Ram is a king and his wife Sita gets abducted by Ravan, who's a 10-headed demon king. And one of the kids raised his hand and asks me that, what happens after I narrated the story? He said, I have a question. I said, yes. What happens when 2 men are in love with the same woman? And I said, guess what? The woman gets to decide.
How interesting.
Yes.
Must be so flattering to have such a fan following amongst young children.
It is. I mean, it really feels very good, and it's much better than spending time with bankers, I can tell you that. And they're so innocent. And also, I think I've seen a lot of parallels in different cultures. So, for example, Hanuman, the monkey god from India. There's a monkey god in China.
Oh, is it?
Yes. And kids can relate to animals very well. And I think that's one of the reasons that our ancient sages 5,000 years back created all these gods. So if you can't relate to a man, you relate to a monkey, Hanuman, or you relate to a elephant, Ganesha.
Okay.
So I think it's the same thing in other cultures.
Wow.
The other parallel I find is because I'm just starting to work on my next book, which is on how Vishnu came as the Matsya, the fish avatar.
Yeah.
And the story is so similar. I see parallels in Noah's Ark.
Okay. How is
You know,
that?
in Noah's Ark, the big boat, where
Yeah.
all living things were taken on the boat and saved,
Yeah.
is the same thing. So there's a
Wow.
boat which Vishnu gets,
Yes.
and his snake Vasuki, he ties it, and they put everything on the boat and they take it to the Himalayas till the big storm is over.
Wow, how interesting. Which book is this?
So the next one is on the first avatar of Vishnu when he comes as a fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have written 16 books so
Yes.
far, and so which one of those are your personal favorite?
Oh, wow. That's a hard question to answer. But I think the first, Holi, was very special because it was really an idea that came together and I was able to execute it and see it. And of course, that's true of every book, but because the first experience is sort of so novel in a way,
Yes.
I think that's very special. Diwali is another very special one because, you know, we've grown up celebrating Diwali.
Absolutely.
It's one of our biggest festivals and it's a very special memory. You know, all of us cousins used to kind of huddle together at the end of the day. My grandmother sitting on a chair like this and she would tell us a story about Lakshmi. So it has very fond memories. In the Amma Take Me series, my favorite, really there are 4 books. My favorite is the Dargah of Salim Chishti, which is in Fatehpur Sikri near the Taj Mahal. And that's because I've been visiting that Dargah of a Sufi saint as a child. And I've been tying and untying threads and
Wow.
making wishes since I was maybe 7 years old.
Wow.
So again, it brings back lots of memories.
Lots of memories. If you were to take yourself back 20 years ago, do you think there's anything you would have done differently, you would have liked to do differently?
Oh, so many.
Like
so
what?
many. So no regrets, but I think I would have, you know, I studied economics and then I did a master's in finance. I don't think I would have done that. I remember being very interested in psychology and journalism, and I would have done one of the two. But it's also, I think at that time, a lot of what peers doing. And for me, it was a lot of sort of, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but a lot of focus was on what can I do to become financially independent.
Okay.
You know, and that MBA seemed like the best option because that's
Yes.
where you heard, you know,
That was the thing of the time.
that was the thing of the time. So I think I was influenced by peer. Having said that, I really enjoyed banking. I was fortunate to find a place and a role in banking that I really thrived in. So I'm very grateful for that. But to answer your question, no, I wouldn't have studied what I studied. I would have, I think, studied journalism.
What is your advice today to a 25-year-old Bhakti?
That's a good question, Jaya. I think my advice to, you know, anyone who's at that age would be really do what you enjoy doing. Pursue something where you feel time stops when you're doing it. You know, when you don't feel, oh, it's been 1 hour, 2 hours. It's like when you do it and like, wow, 3 hours have gone.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in that sort of state of flow. So do things you love and opportunities and money will follow.
Wow.
It's, you know, life is too short to do things because of what somebody else is saying,
Yeah.
because of peer pressure. And I think and now when I look at schooling and I look at college, there's so many resources available, like counselors, for example. So one of the
Yes.
roles of counselors is to really try to match what your innate talents are with your area of interest. We never had that.
Yeah.
So it's not even being foolish. It's not saying that, you know, go and study engineering if you're not interested. But, you know, if you're interested in dance, do that. If you're interested in writing, wherever you feel, you know, there's the intersection of your talents and your interests. And I think people are getting, I mean, kids are getting a lot of guidance from what I see.
So do what you're passionate about.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
My other question to you would be like, how has Hong Kong been for your personal journey?
Oh, it's been great. I think I really discovered myself in Hong Kong, or I'm still discovering myself in Hong Kong. You know, Hong Kong is a great place because you can be in the heart of the city, and within 15 minutes you can be climbing a mountain. And where else in the world is this possible?
Yeah.
And
I
it's
agree.
safe, and it's beautiful. And I think there's something about being out in nature. It just energizes you. You know, very often, I mean, I've read this and I've practiced this as well. If you're upset about something, a problem you're thinking about, just go and be in nature for an hour and the answers come to you. And even if you don't have a problem, it's just so nice
Yes.
being out. So I think it's given me a lot to start with, you know, on a personal journey, on a professional journey, on different interests. And the thing is that things are doable in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
You may have lots of interests, but is a city conducive for you to be actually able to do it?
So what's next for Bhakti now?
Oh,
You are someone who likes to do so many things and have done so many things at different stages of your life. What's next for you?
you know, I'm just enjoying being in the moment right now. And haven't really planned anything. But I think I'd like to, you know, go into a mode of discovering myself more, maybe a little bit more of quiet time, a little bit more of introspection, and see where the journey takes me.
All right. So are you ready for a rapid fire question?
Oh my
now?
God, okay.
That is getting to know Bhakti's story in a little more fun way.
Let's do it.
So question number 1. What's your consistent morning routine?
Morning is meditation and exercise.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite casual dining place in Hong Kong?
Oh, there are two places I really like. One is Posto Pubblico, which is
That's an Italian
fantastic
place.
Italian, yes. And my
Yes.
children love it too. My husband loves it. And the other is Tokyo Joe, which is
Okay.
Japanese in Lang Kwai Fong.
Okay. And your favorite formal dining place in Hong Kong?
I love Nadaman,
Oh,
the teppanyaki at Nadaman.
yes. I've heard very good things about it. So what is your best way to hang yourself loose with friends and family in Hong Kong?
One of them is hiking.
Okay.
It's great to spend time. And when you're with friends, especially when you're with close friends, you really don't know where the 3-4 hours have gone, and you realize you've had a good workout, you've been out in nature. And I think with my kids really is having a good meal, watching a movie. One of my favorite things to do to them, though they're 10 and 12, and I'm able to successfully still do it, is read to them.
Okay.
Even chapter books, read to them at night. So that's something I really like doing.
All right. On a romantic date in Hong Kong, what would you love to do? And I'm giving you a couple of choices. You have to pick one. Stroll on a beach in Hong Kong, go hiking on Hong Kong mountains, a nice dinner, music or culture show, or be out on a boat. Pick one.
Oh, I think it has to be dinner and movie.
Really?
Yeah, because we don't talk so much on a hike. We're kind of like huffing and puffing, though I love hiking as well. But yeah, I would say movie and dinner.
Okay. And so what is one of the scariest thing that you have done in Hong Kong?
In Hong Kong,
It could be anywhere. Let's make it general.
so the scariest thing I've done is bungee jumping.
Okay.
And I mean, if I knew how scary it was, I would never have done it. And that was in New Zealand. Yes, that has to be the scariest.
Okay. And what was the last time you did something for the first time?
Oh, you've come up with some great questions. So I did two things recently. I tried a Kathak class a month back. So
Okay,
as a young
interesting.
girl, when I was about maybe 9 or 10 years old, I learned for maybe 2-3 months and then stopped for some reason. So I really wanted to go back and try it again. So that's something, I mean, as good as new. And of course, there were only 14-year-old girls in the class who said, oh, we've grown up on your books. Just made me realize how old I am.
Wow.
But that was very interesting. The other thing that friends of mine really pushed me to do was to go scuba diving
Wow. Where did
And-
you do that?
in different places in Philippines and recently in Andaman. And I'm scared of water. I learned to swim when I was pregnant with my first child. So you can imagine, very late in life.
Okay.
And I have a fear sometimes of closed places. And I was able to go scuba diving. So I think that's something that face your fear.
So 3 words that describes your life in Hong Kong, or 3 sentences.
I think it's an adventure. It's a journey going inwards.
Uh-huh.
And it's relationships,
Wow.
time with loved ones.
What are you most proud of being a Hong Konger?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think I'm just so happy and proud of being a part of this vibrant city. The energy of this city just amazes me. The resilience of the people, and it has given me so much in every which way. So I think I'm just so proud to have been part of a journey of this city. And I feel strongly that if I can give back to the city in any way that I can, that I would want to.
What would you tell the people around the world? Why should they visit Hong Kong?
Just for the energy of the people. And of course, there is a fair bit of history. And the history with, of course, now we're part of China and the legacy of the British. But I would really say, come for the energy.
Well, thank you so much, Bhakti, for coming to our show.
Thank you for inviting me, Jay. I had a wonderful time, especially in your rapid fire questions.
Stay tuned for our next episode on dreams, fashion, and your Hong Kong story, where we shall be bringing you another fascinating story from this wonderful land.